Welcome to the Dateable AF podcast, because women dating women is wild, wonderful, and occasionally a disaster. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Kyle, a therapist in private practice.
And I'm your co-host, Rachel Howell, researcher extraordinaire.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 10 of the Dateable AF podcast. Today, our topic is, that is not a boundary, babe. It's emotional micromanagement. Let's fix it. We are talking about how people set boundaries and what they think is a boundary, but it ain't a boundary.
You know, I was thinking about this topic, and I do believe that maybe I've been doing this wrong for a while.
Do tell, what have you been doing wrong?
Well, I've set some boundaries, all right, but I'm learning from this. I'm going to learn from this discussion because sometimes I think maybe I have set some boundaries that were not appropriate boundaries to be setting, or I am putting the boundary on somebody else instead of myself.
Yes, that is so common. And I would say this is one of the things that comes up most often in couples therapy. People think that setting a boundary is about changing someone else's behavior and telling them how they can and cannot behave. And what I would say is, if that's what you're doing, you're confusing setting a boundary with trying to control someone else. So today, we're going to talk about how to make boundaries about your actions and not someone else's compliance.
Well, I can give an example of that. So right before we came on, I don't know, those of you that are steady listeners remember when I was eating the Twizzlers in front of Sarah, and she felt that was a violation.
How could I forget? That was just so recent. It still hurts for me to hear you bring it up.
Yeah. So right before the show started, I jammed down a Twizzler out of respect to only pop on the screen to find her stuffing a Reese's peanut butter cup in her grill. And she knows I love Reese's peanut butter cups. So the boundary I wanted to set was, okay, Miss Rude, don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And
the boundary.
No, but the boundary I'm going to set now is, the next time that you come on eating your Halloween candy early in front of me, especially the chocolate candy, I'm walking off this podcast.
Okay, I'll be here by myself next week, folks. I want to give a special shout out to our friend, Monique, who once did not date someone because she ate too much candy.
Oh, so. Was that cotton candy?
So, Monique, you know who you are.
Yes, you do.
Ever date me, because I'm about halfway through a bag of Halloween candy right now.
So obviously, Sarah's wife completely is in violation of the buy Halloween candy early and it be the kind that you like to eat. So now
she bought like a 5-pound bag of all the good chocolate. It's got Reese's, Snickers, peanut M&Ms. It's got all the things.
That's boundary violations all over the place.
I'm going to have to set a boundary for myself on that one. Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, let's talk about what a boundary actually is. So a boundary is a clear statement of what you will do in response to someone else's behavior. A boundary is not telling someone else what they have to do. So I'm going to give you an example of this. People think that a boundary would be saying, you can't talk to me like that if somebody's being rude to them. That is not a boundary. That is trying to control someone else's behavior. But what you could say is, if you talk to me like that, I'm going to go in the other room. Or if you talk to me like that, I'm going to hang up the phone. So you're letting them know what you're going to do in response to their behavior. You're not trying to get them to stop doing a behavior.
In all seriousness, I have practiced this before in my previous relationship. And I will tell you that 100% when I'm able to take responsibility for what I need to do in order to keep myself safe or to be true to myself in a situation that feels hard. Then, and the language you just used is a great example. The response by the other person is always better and it's more productive. And typically the behavior stops. If I'm not good at that and I try to create a ultimatum, sort of thing, it never goes well.
It never goes well.
It's not effective.
It is not effective, but people keep on doing it. Yep. And I think that what happens is that boundaries start to get tangled up with control. So I'm wanting to feel safe. And I think in order to feel safe, I need you to change your behavior. But the truth is we can't outsource feeling safe. We might need to remove ourselves from an unsafe situation, but we can't count on someone else to change their behavior. So you gotta get that focus back on yourself and what you're going to do in response to someone else.
And I do think that what I like about this is I think this topic is just, I hope people really lean into this because I do think it's something that people aren't typically good at, and especially when they're frustrated with one another, or there are these cyclical behaviors that happen in your relationship where you kind of always come back to, say, the same fights, and then you're always fighting them in the same ways. That it's very dicey to be sure that if you do draw a line and say, I'm going to step out of this, I can't be here right now, I'm going to need to remove myself from this, that you aren't punishing somebody by not making sure that they know that you're going to come back in.
That is so important. And I want to come back around to that part later. If you need to remove yourself from a situation, there are some guidelines about that. But I have a really good personal example of that not being about punishment. We've talked about this on the pod before, but I stopped drinking alcohol a handful of years ago. And being the only sober person in the room is not that fun. That's shocking.
Shocking.
But when people start getting slurry and repeaty, it's no longer fun for me. So what I could say is to all my friends, hey, I need you to stop at 2 drinks because I don't feel comfortable when you start getting drunk. That would be ridiculous. Why do I need to control them?
You wouldn't have any friends.
Exactly. That's the God's truth. My friends like to drink. But the other thing is I could get pissy. And when people start getting drunk, and I could storm out and slam the door and be like, I don't want to be around you people. That's not a boundary either. So a good example and what I try to do in that situation, I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to take off now, but have a great rest of your night. Or if it's at my house, I'll say, hey everyone, I'm going to head to bed now, but y'all stay up and have a great time. So I'm letting them do what they want to do, but I'm not forcing myself to be in a situation that doesn't make me comfortable. So I'm not trying to control their behavior, and I'm not trying to punish them for a behavior that I don't like.
Or if you're at somebody else's house, you say, hey, I'm going to go do the dishes.
Exactly. Rachel may or may not have seen me do that a time or two.
But we're never really sure if it has to do with people having too much to drink or we're just getting bored.
Exactly. Same. Like I'm bored. Y'all need to spice up this conversation. But no, I don't get to say that. I get to say, I'm bored. I'm going to go do the dishes. See what a fun party guest I am.
I know where I'm going. No more pickleball talk. No more.
Exactly. We're not going to talk about pickleball or dogs anymore tonight.
We set a strong boundary right there.
Exactly. And if you do, I'm going to go wash the dishes. Oh, Lordy. Yep. And so I think that people don't set boundaries because they feel like they're being mean or they're being selfish if they do that. But it's actually really good self-care, and it's not expecting the other person to change their behavior.
And I do think that growing up, the way you grow up has a lot to do with how you do this. Is that
Yes.
If you grow up in a family where boundaries, threats were made and then they weren't followed through on, or good boundaries were not set, then I do think it is difficult to learn how to do that. And it comes up, I will tell you, in this dating, if you're dating, I think it's a very interesting thing to explore while you're dating someone, to really work through things like that, to see how you do it and see if somebody else understands it. But boy, if it doesn't come up in that and you just start parenting, it's damn sure going to come up there.
Yep, absolutely.
Ooh,
And it's probably not going to go. I'm going to say that you're not going to be that good of a date if you're doing that stuff. Yep. So let's talk about how to set boundaries that actually stick. So the first step I would say to that is you identify the behavior that's bothering you, or the thing that's hurting your peace. And the second step is you decide which part of that you can control, which, hint, that's always going to be about your own actions. It's not going to be about someone else. And the third thing is that you want to communicate clearly and calmly with that person. So don't issue it like an ultimatum. Don't issue it with a snarky tone. Just be clear and calm. And then the most important piece is that you got to take the action that you said. If you said, hey, if you curse at me, I'm going to hang up the phone, the next time the person curses at you, you have to follow through and hang up the phone. You can't say it and then cry wolf, because then they'll believe that you don't mean what you say.
And when you're out there and you're dating someone, and if you date them long enough, eventually you'll have conflict. And if you see these things in conflict, if there's somebody who has those extreme reactions, either they do curse at you, or they hang up on you, or they could try to control you with their behaviors, you need to count on the fact that that is not going to change in that relationship unless they see it as a problem and they get in and work on it. So huge red flag.
Yes, absolutely. And if you get tired of doing that behavior in response to whatever they're doing, you can't think that if I do this behavior, they're going to change. I have a good example of this. Joe and I have a friend that we adore. Her name is Veronica. You might have met her before. And she is always late. And I don't mean 5 minutes late. I mean 30 minutes late. And we would plan something like, hey, let's go on a bike ride and let's meet at this particular spot and at a certain time. She would consistently arrive 30 minutes late, and then that would throw off our whole plan for the rest of the day. Or sometimes it would be, let's go to a movie. And we would be meeting somewhere to ride to the movie together, and she wouldn't get there, and then we'd miss the whole movie. And so we didn't want to ruin the friendship. And we also didn't want our whole plans to be derailed by this person. So we set a boundary by saying, hey, let's make a plan for where we're going to meet. If you're not there within 15 minutes, we're going to go ahead and go. And then you can meet us there, or you can skip it. And it worked. I mean, it worked in the sense that we didn't feel frustrated. And guess what? Sometimes she didn't show up in that 15-minute window and we left. And it just became, but it eased our own frustration because we didn't miss the movie next time, or we didn't miss the bike ride. So that's a good example of, we could get mad at her, or we could expect that boundary would make her change her behavior and be on time. It didn't really. Maybe sometimes she was more on time, but once she started seeing that we were going to leave without her, that did change the dynamic a little bit, but we felt way less frustrated.
I know that some people just say, oh, my person just can't get out the door. They can't be on time. I have a hard time seeing it as something other than a control thing. I mean, what is going on there that you can't fix that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And people have different ideas about it. I know one of yours and my colleagues, Max, is a therapist who works with adults who have ADHD. And we've touched on this topic in talking to Max and saying that, yeah, it's just sometimes there's just this level of chaos going on that the person can't get there on time. That one's a hard one for me, because I feel like if you can be consistently late what would stop you from being able to be consistently on time? I don't know. But if you have this problem, please write to us and let us know what the issue is.
Right. If you believe that it's something other than a control issue or a lack of respect of somebody else's time, I would be open to that. And I do get it that some people, I know somebody that has a hard time getting out of the door because I think they have a little bit of, is it agoraphobia?
Yes.
Yeah.
Afraid of being out. Afraid of being out.
Yeah. And I think that they actually have some agoraphobia. And so this anxiety that builds up as they're trying to get out the door and all this stuff starts getting in the way. And I believe that that's a real thing. I respect it for sure. At the same time, as we all do manage whatever our idiosyncrasies are or things that, get in our way, I mean, you do workarounds. You start earlier, or you set some things in place or set some things in motion so that you can. I have to say I struggle with this when seeing that you can't correct it.
Yeah. And tell yourself that the time is 30 minutes ahead of when you actually have to be there, or whatever your window is that you need. If the event starts at noon, tell yourself it starts at 11:30. So I don't know. It does seem like there are ways that you could work around this if it was something that you chose to work on. But anyway.
Well, in the dating world, I definitely, I don't know how many of you out there have actually waited on somebody more than once when they've been, say, more than 15 minutes late and you've gotten no call or no, and that it happens continually. Let's say, 4 or 5 dates and they've been late to 4 of them out of 5. And are you really still dating that person? No.
Bye. Nope.
No.
That. And of course, everyone's going to run late sometimes. Everyone's going to run into a traffic snag that they weren't anticipating. And we have told you this before, but listen to us again. You let the person know that you're running late, and you let them know when you're going to be there. And you make sure it doesn't happen again the next time. You only get one pass on this.
Here, lop it off.
Lop it off. That's our advice about everything. Just lop it off. But sometimes you don't want to. So anyway, but I would say the main thing that I want to stress to you guys about boundaries is that the power is in the follow through. The power is not in what you say. The power is in making sure that you follow through on the action that you told them you would take. So don't just run your mouth. You got to follow through.
Yeah, because then you don't have any. You got no teeth, no hook. You got no game.
No game.
Yeah.
So there are some times that people try to set a boundary and it backfires. And I think there are a few common things that make that happen. The first thing I would say is do not over-explain and do not apologize for the limits that you're setting. You get to take care of yourself, and you don't have to explain it, and you don't have to apologize for it. We've talked about this before. If I don't want to come to your birthday party on Saturday night, I don't have to go into a long, drawn-out explanation for why I'm not coming. I just say, hey, I'm so sorry I'm not going to be able to make it to your party. I don't need to over-explain, and, I don't need to fall all over myself trying to apologize for a limit that I'm setting.
I do think when you do over-explain, it tends to not go well.
Yes.
I feel like what you do is in that you begin to sound like you don't have confidence in the boundary you've set, and you open the door for somebody to argue about what it is that you're needing.
Yes. You open yourself up to being challenged or argued with. And if you're just matter of fact about it, then people tend to accept it more easily. I think another thing I see sometimes is that you expect people to thank you for setting a boundary.
Is that true? Really? I don't know about that.
Yes, thank you for being so clear about that. People do not like it, especially people who are likely to violate your boundaries. They do not like it when you set boundaries. So they are probably not going to be that appreciative about it. If you say, hey, if you speak to me like that again, I'm going to walk out of the room. They're not going to say, oh, thank you for telling me. They're going to try to keep you in the room with them. So don't expect any kind of particular response from them. Don't expect them to change their behavior. Don't expect them to thank you for setting the boundary. That's probably not going to happen.
So no, it's probably not. I had a dating experience the other night. I was out on a date with this very wonderful Monique, I would call her. Maybe. I know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and we had these women, and we're sitting at this bar. These women yelled at us across the way, "Hey, y'all are beautiful," which was lovely, wonderful. We did the courteous thank you. But I saw the one coming. There's one of us couldn't let it go. She had to come over and visit with us. And
yes, she did.
Yes. And it was a great opportunity for the two of us on this date to figure out how we manage that sort of thing. And
how did you manage it?
Well, what I said to her was, I said, so Monique, ordinarily I'm going to try very hard to not put on my resting bitch face, because this woman is now, I think, going to be up in our grill, and I'm going to really want to give her a boundary that she's probably not going to appreciate. But I said, but I'm going to be really nice and not do that. At one point, I did look over at Monique and go, I go to the restroom, and I'm.
That's a good one. If you keep standing here talking to us, I'm going to have to get up and go to the restroom. But it is interesting, because when you started to tell that story, you said, I started to set a boundary. A boundary, this doesn't mean that you can't make a request of someone. So you could say, hey, we're enjoying our date. We'd like to spend the rest of our evening alone. You can make that request, but if she doesn't comply, then you have to figure out what you'll do in response to it.
It was, for me, it was a really good opportunity for the two of us, the two that were on the date, without our throuple that was there, to watch. And then just really, I felt like it was fun for us to own what we were experiencing in that moment.
Yeah.
Like me owning that, ordinarily that sometimes can make me want to send a signal to somebody that you have overstayed your welcome. Mm-hmm. Whereas Monique was sort of really, I think, much more embracing of the activity and getting more joy out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was.
So you just rolled with it, it sounds like.
I did it. I rolled with it, and eventually, it took longer than it should have, but eventually our third wheel over there finally. She's a new best friend of ours now too. So
Perfect. Did she friend you on
Facebook? Oh, absolutely. She's probably following the podcast now.
Great. I hope so. You know who you are. You overstayed your welcome.
It was very sweet, but it was sort of like, okay.
Oh. So this is actually the thing that you just described could be an example of something else I wanted to talk about, which is mistaking silence for setting a boundary. So if I don't engage with this woman, then she's going to realize that I don't want her to be standing here. And I think that can be a mistake. We think people can read our minds, or we think that if we're not speaking up, that they understand what we're trying to say. And I believe that boundaries require direct communication. You have to really talk about it rather than just assuming that they know.
You do. And I do know some people that can put on a good resting bitch face and that.
Yes, our RBF is a signal for sure. It might not be the same as a boundary, but it does send a signal.
But yeah, I think you do have to use your big girl words.
Big girl words. Yep. I think something else people do often is they set revenge boundaries. And but the revenge boundary is almost always about trying to change someone else's behavior. You're trying to teach them a lesson. So For example, you didn't let me in your lane in traffic. So then when you want to get over, I'm not going to let you in my lane. That's not a boundary. That's just trying to get retribution against someone. Or, for example, I ate a Reese's in front of you today because I was trying to teach you a lesson about eating that Twizzler in front of me a few weeks ago, but I don't think it worked.
No, because you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about driving my ass right on down to Buc-ee's and getting a whole package of those cinnamon bears that you love. And next time, I'm going to sit here and eat them.
See, that would be revenge. That would not be good. You're trying to teach me a lesson.
And you see how those things, revenge upon revenge upon revenge.
Everybody's going to be real chunky at the end of that. Yeah, I did have a moment of fear when you said, I'm going to march myself. I thought you were going to say you were going to march yourself over to my house and try to eat some of my Halloween candy, which did scare me a little bit.
I'm actually, after this, I'm going to text Joe and tell her to grab a handful of that candy from me.
I'm going to tape it up so nobody can get in there.
Because that 5-cent bag isn't enough.
That's right. It might not be enough. We got a long time till Halloween. So we've already touched base about some of this, but I want to talk specifically about setting boundaries in dating and setting boundaries in relationships. Boundaries are not about rigidity. They're just about showing self-respect and showing clarity. So that doesn't mean that you can't still be flexible, but it means when it comes right down to it and something's really bothering you, you have to take action to take care of yourself.
And I do think that you don't want to mix setting a boundary with losing flexibility, to your point. Is that part of dating and just part of developing good relationships is being flexible. And I see that being flexible is a quality. And so boundaries, to me, like you said, you need to save those for when they're really needed. Like, it's important for you to stay healthy in a relationship, but setting a boundary of, I'm never going to go eat, Indian food. Is it necessary, really?
I agree with you 100% about that.
Oh, that one could blow back on me. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure Jeff is listening to this podcast.
Well, I was actually thinking of my mother, but now that you mention it, yes, but my mother just puts her foot down, and my stepfather loves Indian food, loves it. And she just won't.
She won't do it.
She was in town today and she almost forced me to go to Pokey Joe's, and I created a boundary.
I love you, and I'm not willing to go to Pokey Joe's.
I used my words.
That is great. Yep.
I said, you got the guy up there, he's trying to get everybody to eat healthy, and you're going to Pokey Joe's. I don't think he would support that.
I don't think so. Pokey Joe's has a lot of brown sides.
My mother thinks they're vegetables.
Fried okra. I don't think that counts as a vegetable. There is this temptation, though, to use boundaries as emotional tests. I see this come up in therapy a lot. And one of the things I hear a lot is, if this person really cared about me, they would stop doing that. Or if this person really cared about me, they would quit their job that's requiring them to work overtime. If they really cared about me, they would move to another state where I want them to move. And those things are just emotional tests. They are not actually a boundary, because the truth is, I do care about you and I don't want to move out of state. Or I do care about you and I'm not going to quit this job that requires me to work overtime. So being really clear that both things can exist and that is not the same thing as setting a boundary.
No, I got nothing more on that. I think it's very clear.
Yeah, but you would be surprised at how often this comes up. If you loved me, you would fill in the blank. And so people think that that's setting a boundary, and it's actually not at all, because that boundary, again, is about someone else's behavior. But if you do set consistent boundaries, you're building trust with that person over time, because they learn what they can count on from you. They learn that your words and your actions line up and that you are going to do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, I can't. Yes, I have had personal experiences with people who don't do what they say they're going to do. and it is more threats, and it's very disconcerting to be on the other side of that.
Yep. You see this a lot with parents and kids. You know, if you do that one more time, you're grounded. It's like, no, then it's not true. The parent doesn't follow through.
I'm going to count to 10.
Mm-hmm. 1,
11. 12.
I had a family member that would say that. I'm going to count to 3. And then she'd go 1, 1, 1. She never got to 3 because she wasn't ever going to follow through. Oh, my goodness.
God.
Well, let's wrap this up and tell folks what we would like them to take away from this episode.
Well, first, a boundary isn't about controlling them. It's about protecting you. So don't try to control the other person. Just focus on stating the things that you need in order to protect yourself and the things you're willing to do for yourself.
Yes. Yeah, you cannot make someone behave differently. You can just tell them what you're going to do when they don't behave differently.
And follow through is the magic ingredient. Otherwise, it's just a hollow either comment or a hollow threat. And that, eventually people just are not going to be responsive. Behaviors won't change.
Absolutely. And the statement, if you do X, I'm going to do Y, is always preferable to saying you need to stop doing X, because this all goes back to you don't get to control whether that person does X or not, but you do get to control your response to that.
And as we mentioned, clarity beats explanation, that you don't need to spend a lot of time explaining in depth, just to make your statement, stand behind it, and do what you said you're going to do in order to keep yourself safe or healthy in the relationship.
Yes, absolutely. And if you think that boundaries are about creating walls, then I really want you to rethink this. Boundaries create freedom. Boundaries give you a sense of empowerment about yourself. They're not about pushing other people away. They're actually just about creating relationships where everybody understands the rules of engagement.
People may think that's it is like a baseline 101 parenting thing that you learn as a good parent. It's what makes kids feel safe. It's the same concept with adults, is that they know where the limit is. They understand it, and it doesn't keep changing all the time. It doesn't move on them all the time.
Yes. Yes, that is so true. So if you want to talk further with your partner about this topic or with your friends about this topic, we have a few points of discussion. So talk with them about times that you notice that you're trying to influence or control their behavior. If you catch yourself doing that, and again, this is about what you're catching yourself doing, not what you're catching them doing. But if you find yourself trying to set a quote unquote boundary, but your end goal is to change their behavior, call yourself out and let them know about it. And then I would love for you guys to talk about reframing that into how you could set a boundary for yourself instead.
Good suggestions.
Yeah. Well, as always, we love to hear from you. So please keep the feedback coming. We've gotten some really great feedback and comments about our previous episodes. And as you know, some of you end up hearing about yourselves in our after party episodes, because when we get comments from you and feedback, we do like to shout you out. So please keep sending us your thoughts. You can reach us on Instagram at Dateable AF, or you can reach us via email, info@dateableaf.com. Please join us next week. We got a juicy one next week. We're going to be talking about open for business, a discussion of ethical non-monogamy. So don't forget to tune in for that. And as always, we want to thank you for listening to the Dateable AF podcast, where we help you find your happy ending.
Remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of queer dating, don't text your ex. Stay dateable.
AF.